When viewing the history of the United States, it seems that our country is in a semi-constant state of war. Between the years of 2001 and 2018, the U.S. has undergone Operation Enduring Freedom, where a high percentage of the fighting has happened in Afghanistan and Iraq. During this fighting, body count for the U.S. military has risen 6,850 bodies and counting. In 2014, I decided to join the United States Navy. After a total of 17 months of training, I became a corpsman with a subspecialty of X-ray. When signing my contract to become a Navy corpsman, I took on the responsibility of always having to be deployable, not only with sailors, but also Marines. One of the key elements they teach us is what is called the March algorithm. This is the basic way to save someone's life under tactical care under fire. It is almost second nature to us, and when it happens, we know what to do now. MARCH stands for massive hemorrhaging, airway, respirations, circulations, head injuries, and hypothermia. Massive hemorrhaging is one of the fastest killers on the battlefield. With major battle injuries, it can take less than 2 minutes to bleed out from these injuries. When checking for massive hemorrhage, you move from the neck down, swiping your hands, looking for blood, and then wiping on your pants. You go from the neck, down the arms, down the torso, pelvis, and then legs. No blood. If there is blood from a massive hemorrhage on an extremity, we use what is called a tourniquet. You put it onto the limb, use the Velcro to cinch it tight, and then a knob on the side to twist until it is tight enough that the bleeding stops. After all massive hemorrhaging is taken care of, we move to the next important thing, the airway. Without air, the brain begins to die at 4 minutes, and the average time to suffocation is 6. When checking the airway, we do a maneuver that is called the chin lift jaw thrust, where you take your 2 fingers, place them under the chin, under the jaw, lift upward, and then use your thumbs to thrust the jaw down to the chest. This allows us to open the mouth and look for debris such as broken bones or broken teeth. If you can see them, use your finger and sweep to get the debris out. If you cannot see them, you move to an NPO, which is a hard, rigid hook that we insert through the nose to the back of the mouth. This allows possibility of opening an airway. If this does not work, we use a cricothyrotomy. What this is you take a scalpel and you cut between the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage, and you use a tube with a balloon attached at the end and insert to create a manual airway. Following any of these interventions is checking respirations. If the respirations are unusual, we use our hands in a tiger claw fashion and sweep the torso, as well as rolling onto the back and sweeping the back for any penetrating chest wounds. These wounds can look small, but they might be deep. So one of the things we do is use a vented chest seal, take the plastic off, and an adhesive side down. This allows the chest to refill and that penetration wound to be sealed. If that doesn't work, we do a needle decompression with a needle such as this. We go from the midclavicular line down to the second and third intercostal space and plunge down at a 90-degree angle. This will penetrate the lung and allow it to refill itself. After respirations comes circulation. This portion is when we check on smaller wounds. If there is a hemostat dressing such as this available, you use this dressing, pack it into a wound, and then hold pressure for 3 minutes. If there are any broken bones, now is also the time to splint them. You should also check for pulses in both wrists. Check to see how they are, if they're fluttery, if they're distant, if they're weak, strong. This allows you to know if your patient might be going into shock, which leads to head wounds. Head wounds should be noted for the risk of possible traumatic brain injury. A halo test, which checks for CSF or cerebral spinal fluid, is one of the main tests that we use. You take a piece of gauze, wipe the ears or the nose, and you check the blood. If there is a yellow ring around the blood, that is CSF fluid. That means there is a traumatic brain injury or a TBI. Once we do that, we also check for raccoon eyes or bruising under the eyes, or battle signs, which is bruising behind the ears. These are all used so once we are out of the danger zone, We know whether or not the patient has a TBI and what type of medications they are allowed to have. Finally, we take a blanket and we cover the patient if there is a risk against hypothermia, as well as helping the patient with shock. Although the MARCH algorithm is mostly used for tactical combat care, it can be learned by anyone who's willing. Massive hemorrhaging is always the first thing to be treated, followed by airway, respiration, circulation, and then head injuries and hypothermia. There's always a chance of a bad accident, and these skills are all covering basic aspects to save someone's life. When the time comes, will you be prepared, or will ignorance cost someone a life? Thank you for listening.